reducing the issue into parts and pieces. What happens if you don't do this? Well, it may seem as though there's still intensity around an issue, but in fact you've actually cleared significant portions of it, but have ignored other parts and pieces. Or there might be too many aspects that come up all at once, which may result in you feeling overwhelmed. This is quite common if the issue is too global. Or the issue may come back because you haven't been thorough in exploring all the parts and pieces. If you're too global or general with your issue, the tapping will likely not work well, or it may take a really long time. That's because there are so many sub-issues to it that you might not even be aware of for now. There are ways to get to that. So what you want to do is to try to choose the most specific piece or little part of it that you can. This isn't always the easiest thing because sometimes we have a series of things, or they're all interconnected, or we can only see the one really big issue instead of all those supporting parts. Picking that specific thing can be really challenging that way. Sometimes the problem feels like a big knot or tangled ball of yarn. Working through the questions of the Exploration Questions tool will help you to unravel this so that you can gain more clarity. But in that case, I'm going to recommend that you write it down on a piece of paper and just start breaking it down. You can use a tapping exploration map if it helps. You'll learn about this tool in this module as well. Then you have those things in front of you which will really help. You'll also get used to that process of breaking it down into specific parts and pieces. An example might be something like, I'm having a problem with my kids, or I'm having a problem with my husband, or I have a weight problem. These are all way too broad. You might get some results, but it's highly unlikely that you'll get satisfying and permanent results if you approach it too globally. With any of these types of issues, even though it feels like there's one single issue, it's actually a basket of issues when you start to unpack it. And doing that unpacking or deconstructing of an issue takes some practice. It may even take some guidance. It's often helpful to work with an experienced tapping practitioner who can help you sort through those issues, and then they may be able to point out those single tappable pieces that you can then work on yourself. So if you say, for example, I hate my job, well, that's pretty big. You might feel really strongly about that. To break it down, you'll need to ask yourself what it is that you hate about your job. What specific parts do you hate about your job? Why do you hate it? You could even get out a piece of paper and break it down a little. Do you hate your coworkers? Do you hate the hours? Do you hate the stress level? What exactly do you hate about it? Get really detailed or specific. Of that list, then choose one of those things. And even then, see if you can break it down some more. If you say, I hate the hours, well, what do you hate about the hours? Do you hate that it keeps you from your kids? Do you hate that you have to get up so early? Do you hate that they always ask you to do overtime? Then you choose one of those. Here's another example. Let's say you can't sleep. You decide to make your step 1 issue on the DIY tapping worksheet very general by writing, I can't sleep. For step 2, you need to break it down more. Is it that you always can't sleep, or is it that you can't sleep at a certain time? Do you have trouble falling asleep, or do you fall asleep easily and wake up in the middle of the night at the same time? This is all good information to use while you're tapping. Also, these may all be different issues. After you've gotten a bit clearer about what part of sleep is the problem, I recommend actually using that as your step 1 in the DIY tapping worksheet. This way you can break it down further if possible. Perhaps you have trouble falling asleep, but usually sleep through the night. When you start asking yourself questions to break it down for step 2, you might find that the issue is more about anxiety from the day that you're carrying around and can't let go. Maybe your mind just won't stop, or maybe your body is restless or in pain that's keeping you from falling asleep. Check to see if this has always been a problem or if it's something new. What changed to make this happen? These types of questions will point you to the specific parts and pieces that you can tap on. Let's use an example from a memory. Let's say you broke something that was important to your grandfather. The memory begins with you focusing on hearing your grandfather yell at you. That's one aspect. Or perhaps it's the image of you crying afterwards. That's another part. You might notice that you're focused on seeing your grandfather's shocked or disappointed face the moment that he noticed something happened. that's yet another part, a different aspect than the others. Seeing the look on someone's face, hearing shouting, or smelling something intense, they are all possible pieces of an image or memory. That's just something to notice. When it comes to memories, check out all of your senses. What were you seeing? What were you feeling? What did you taste? Were you eating something at that moment? What did you hear? What did you smell? Check in with that because those are all separate parts and pieces. In the case of physical trauma, there might be something that has a physical feel to it. Like if you were pushed, there might be pressure on your body. Or in a car accident, it might be something hitting your head. Or it might be a texture. Or if you have a spider or snake phobia, it might be the way that it moves or the way that you notice it out of the corner of your eye. Or it might be the way that it's looking at you, or the feeling of something on your hands or your arm. Pay attention to the senses and how you know that something is an issue for you, and that will really bring you a lot of information about how to break it down into those parts and pieces. The more you can break it down, the better results you'll get. This is because you can go back and address each piece little by little. The process works so quickly and easily that you can keep going back and treating each little piece. That's how you'll get the best results. You can work your way through the list. Don't worry even if you have an enormous list. Tap through each piece as you have time. Just keep working through the list. Tapping tends to work quite quickly, so you'll likely be able to work your way through that list within a very reasonable amount of time. This is one of the fastest techniques out there. It might seem like a long list, but it's worth going through it piece by piece, and you'll get way better results if you get really specific. So that's a little bit about why you need to get specific. I know I sound like a broken record about being specific and jotting things down, but it is so important to do this. This is the number one reason why people believe tapping doesn't work. People think that if they just keep tapping, if they tap for 3 days straight on, even though I have this problem with my husband, that something magical is going to happen. That's not how tapping works, and I can't really stress this enough. So a good rule of thumb is to always assume that things are more complex and always look to see if you can break it down more.